Well, if it's good things from Mike, then definitely take it with a grain of salt, but listen to him. And we are rolling, so we'll go ahead and
we're up and going. Hey, it's good to have you back on, man. It's been, this has been a podcast that I've been wanting to do for a long time, ever since we did our original, because it seemed like we had so many technical problems in the beginning of getting it, and then getting everything edited, and then trying to get it out on the the platform. And I think at the time, the only thing we were doing was just YouTube at the time. And since that time, now we're on Spotify, we're on iHeartRadio, we're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, done a bunch of different platforms. Plus, we're still doing the YouTube, so we're getting a lot more exposure.
Oh, that's great, Mike. I really appreciate the fact too you haven't tried to take Joe Rogan head on yet and say either Joe Rogan or you.
Yeah,
on Spotify.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. Just take down all 18 of our episodes. Isn't that crazy? I mean, I can't.
Insane.
Yeah. Then I was looking. I saw somebody posted something on Instagram today about two other artists. One was the lead singer for the Foo Fighters, and the other one was somebody I had never heard of before. And they were jumping on the bandwagon with Neil Young, and it's like I don't know what they're thinking. That's just. Yeah.
I don't know. Like we mentioned earlier when we were talking on the phone. It's funny how this counterculture generation is now endorsing some level of authoritarianism.
Exactly. Yeah. In the whole cancel culture, that, if they don't like what they're hearing, they don't want to hear the opposite side. They don't want to hear somebody else's opinion. It's either their way or or we're going to cut you out and nobody's going to hear you.
Which, I think liberal has probably never been really a bad word until it's been co-opted, because, liberal ideology allowed free speech.
Yeah.
It allowed people to share ideas. And now it seems like all that's gone away. The free sharing of ideas. If I don't like what you have to say, I can't just accept that you have a belief or a viewpoint. I have to say you're, some sort of ist.
Yes.
You're and I think that once you start othering people, instead of being able to have that free exchange of ideas, I think we really run into a problem.
Well,
with the country.
really, when you stop and think about it, is censorship, is that whole cancel mentality, is that really liberal?
That's what I'm saying. It's not.
It's not. It's actually
so far away from it.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure where they land, because it's not far left that's doing it, and it's definitely not over on the right side. So I'm really not. If maybe they're developing their own position someplace. The outer limits of.
But I am glad you haven't been canceling anyone and moving forward.
Well, yeah, I wanted to, but then I thought, no, that's going to go against, my principles. So I'm just going to let everybody have their say, even if I don't agree with half the world. So, oh God. Yeah, it's a crazy world. It's, when you think about it, and you get a person like a Joe Rogan, who quite honestly doesn't really give a lot of opinion one way or another. He's not telling people what to do or how to do it or whatever. And he brings both sides to his table. And
he seems to be the guy that's asking the questions, just trying to get more insight. He never, at least I haven't seen him really take a position.
No, not really. And he's actually more liberal, towards the left at times than he is. He isn't what I would call a real conservative. I think he has some liberal ideas, some liberal thoughts, and I don't know why anybody would think that that's a bad thing. To where it's really a sad statement in our country when you start saying people cannot voice an opinion, and if they do voice an opinion and it doesn't fall in line with what a particular group thinks that should fall in line to, the first thing they think about is canceling or censoring, or just in this case, what do they want to do? They just want to cut the show completely and quiet him down so he no longer has a platform. It's
correct.
It's really
it's
really
it's
ridiculous.
a strange place we're at in society right now.
Yeah. So how are things going with you? How are things? How are things? Last time we talked, I think we were in the middle of the pandemic, weren't we? Or were we just getting started on it?
I don't know. Have we crossed that middle point yet? Or
I know.
I don't know where we're at anymore.
Yeah, true statement. Yeah, I don't know either. But I think when we last talked, because are you still at the airport?
I am running one of our airport divisions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the airport division is the captain over that. And it's a really interesting operation. In my 27 years of police work, I've only been running an airport police division for the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. And it's a completely different aspect to policing than anything I've ever done before, as far as municipal policing in a large metropolitan city. It's definitely more customer service oriented, mm-hmm. which is a good thing. I mean, a lot of officers don't necessarily realize we are in the customer service business first and foremost. I mean, that's really the only way to look at it. The difference is at an airport, police divisions, and I've talked to many around the country since I've assumed this role, is it's a little bit more laid back. The mission has changed slightly. We're definitely looking for terrorism issues. You definitely don't want explosives or weapons to get on a plane with someone with nefarious intent. Mm-hmm. But we don't have that call volume that we get in the inner city. So officers have a lot more time to stop and interact with people on a more human level. There's no rush to get to that next call. We could always use more officers, but as far as my staffing goes, it's adequate to the point that they can stop and interact with folks mm-hmm. and not feel that rush to go anywhere else.
Right.
In fact, one time I was walking through the airport and this elderly woman asked me if I'd help carry her bags out to her car. And my initial inclination was, I'm busy. And I thought for a second, I'm like, wait, I'm just walking to a meeting. I've got time to go do this. So I walked her out to the car, and I find out that my officers do stuff like this every day.
Oh, really?
Really leave a positive impact on the traveling public that they interact with.
Yeah. I think that's, there are so many changes that I believe are being made. Some changes maybe not for the better. Some changes, for sure for the better. But I think that we're seeing in these particular times changes just in our society across the board, and I think that law enforcement is included in that, in the way that not only how the public perceives law enforcement, but also how I believe law enforcement is perceiving the public. As you said, it's an opportunity to interact where possibly 20 years ago that wasn't something that we would have given a lot of thought to.
No, if you look at some of the history of policing, early on it started, with officers working foot patrols, things of that nature. Some of our larger cities can still afford to do that when it comes to staffing. I look to New York for that kind of model where they still have people walking beats. Mm-hmm. I don't know of many other cities in the U.S. that are doing that right now. Somewhere along the way, we moved into a car culture, mm-hmm. windows rolled up, less of that interaction with Joe and Fred down the street, that run the, whatever, your convenience store or your businesses. You used to know each one of them. And even early on in my career, things were definitely a little bit slower to the point that you could stop and walk around, say a downtown area and get to know all the business owners personally. So if they had a problem, you had much more of a connection to solve that. I think as police departments progressed, they believed that when you got into a car, it created more efficiency. Mm-hmm. When in some sense it does, but in other sense it disconnects the officers in a lot of ways from the communities that they're serving, because they are running call to call to call, especially in this day and age, and really not feeling like they have that time to stop and interact with those community members that they're serving. I think that's just I think it's progressively been going that way. Obviously, the last couple of years have been incredibly tumultuous in the law enforcement field.
Boy, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's created some real division. You know, we have people arguing to defund the police, and then in those same cities we see massive increases in crime. You know, because I believe officers tend to be less proactive in those communities because they don't know if they have the support to do their job effectively. The other thing is how many people really want to deal with that kind of scrutiny every day, or knowing that every day you go to work, you might make the right decision. Right. But the public opinion swings the other way, even though legally you were in the right, doing the right thing for the right reason. And next thing you know, you're looking for a job somewhere else.
Right. Well, I think that's a huge part of it. When you have police officers that want to do the right thing, when you have police officers that are really have the public's best interest at heart, they, I think, are feeling that their hands are a little bit tied and they don't know which direction to go, because if they do something that may even just appear to be wrong, they're not feeling as though they're going to get the backing. They're not going to. They're not going to get the support from the city, or from actually in some cases even upper management in the department itself. You know, so
yeah, it's really time where you start seeing, you know, courageous leaders stepping up to the plate that'll really stem the tide of attrition that we're seeing, and lack of you know, people willing to, like, obviously we're having recruitment issues as well due to the climate that's in. We're not seeing a lot of people. However, we are finding some very good people that want to come into the work. In fact, one of my cohorts, I just found out his son hired on. And, you know, he sat down and let him know all the issues that are going on. And he's like, no, Dad, I want to do this, and it'll help the community. It makes me feel like I'm doing my part. Yeah. And I was impressed by that.
I think that in the very beginning, when the conversation turned to defunding, it really had some harsh ramifications immediately. Because I think that there was so much exposure on the whole topic of defunding, and there was a few leaders out there that were getting a lot of press on being very vocal about defunding. But we also saw that there were quite a few, as you said, courageous leaders that stood up and said, no, you know, we're not going to defund. If anything, we would add more money, you know, to the coffers to help with training and help with recruitment and help with whatever.
You know, that's one of the funny things, because people, I mean, police departments, I don't necessarily disagree with some of the changes in duties. Like mental health really should not be a police issue unless someone's life is in immediate danger.
I agree.
You know, those things are social service issues, but for whatever reason, police departments across the country have taken that burden on their shoulders.
Wouldn't that be because in other areas they were, you know, in the social side of it, and for mental health, there were such budgetary cuts over the years in those particular fields that it, you know, somebody had to take it over. Somebody had to take charge, and if they're dumping, and I use that word loosely, but people with mental illness out onto the street rather than hospitalizing or medication or you know, some type of care, and they're just out on the street. Well, it became a law enforcement issue, because it went hand in hand with serving and protecting the public, but they were never trained I don't believe, to deal with mental illness. It wasn't part of the training program.
No, not to the level it's at now. I mean, now our officers are heavily. There's a lot of time invested in them on mental health awareness, how to deal with different situations. People with schizophrenia or autism. Additional training. I'm all for additional training in just about every aspect. What a lot of folks don't realize is when we put officers in training, that's one less officer that's on the street. And so it comes into a staffing thing. So I'm definitely on the side of, if we want better outcomes, we'd be better off to have more officers on the street. They're not as taxed mentally, or the stress is lessened by having more of them out there, being able to take the time to interact with the folks in their communities. And, if anything, I think we do need to look back to getting officers out of the car more, getting them talking to the people in the neighborhood, getting them to talk to the business community that they're serving if they're working in more of an urban area. Those things are all going to make a big difference, and it helps both sides. It helps the officers feel human again, if you will, and it also gets the community to understand that these officers are part of their community and that they care about the community.
Yeah, I think that would be a huge step in the right direction, because one of the perceptions of police officers are law enforcement, and I always hate just to point the finger at police officers, the people in the uniform that we see in the cars, but it's the law enforcement community as a whole. The people that we don't see all the time, the detectives, the dispatchers, the people that are behind the scene, the administrative staff. There are so many of these people that I believe have over the years been disconnected from the streets and from the people, in the communities, not by anything on their part that they're thinking, well, we don't need to be there. It's just a time thing. You only have so much time in the day, and I think that the task that these people take on, like a dispatcher. I mean, they're not going to be out on the street. They're not going to be meeting the people, but that's probably one of the most grueling jobs in law enforcement at times. The number of calls that come through, and the
stress that they get put through in these critical situations. I mean, I know my hat's off to them, because I could not do that job. I would have some difficulty with it.
Yeah. In the stress level, not just because of the number of calls, but then you get frantic callers. You get people and you're doing the best to make sure you got people rolling. You got people, that, are on the way, and you got the right people, whether or not it's the law enforcement or whether or not it's the paramedics or, whatever that it is, that's a huge, huge job. And it's easy to get mono-focused on what your position is and your job is, and you're doing the best that you can, but to take everything else into consideration and take the average person out on the street, and I'm not talking dispatching now, but we're administrative staff, our captains, our lieutenants, our chiefs, our sergeants, it's really hard.
It is something you need to strive for when you get in these positions, to make sure you're in communication with the people at the ground level. Mm-hmm. If you lose touch with them, it can very easily become an emperor's new clothes situation if you start drinking your own Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. Myself, I like to go out and talk with my officers, ask them what issues they have, ask them straight up, what things can I do better for you? What things do you need from me? And I think that daily interaction, is at least as often as possible with my staff, I think keeps me in the loop on what issues we're facing, on the day-to-day level.
Yeah.
The view from where I sit is very different
right.
than the view that those guys have every day when they come into work.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, and that's not just in law enforcement. You take that into the private sector, into business. You could be a manager, but if you don't connect with your people, you're not really going to have a hands-on feel for what's going on in your own company because you're not communicating. And I think that that's one area where all of us need to get better at, and that's to communicate. And when you talk about communication, one of the first things that you will learn is communicating isn't being verbal. Communicating is listening. You have to be a good listener if you're going to learn to communicate. So if you're talking to, not you, but, managers or administrative staff is going to have conversations with their people, listening to the people, listening to the other officers, or listening to the salespeople, or listening to whoever it is in business is paramount.
Yeah, and one thing to remember too, as you move higher up in any organization, it's to be willing to hear the stuff you don't want to hear.
True statement.
Hey, this idea you came up with is wrong because X, Y, and Z. You know what? They might be right.
True.
They might be right. And I think as long as you can foster that trust with your people, that you're not going to be retaliatory towards them for an opposing view. I mean, because many of them will offer their opposing view, but they'll still do what they're asked to do.
Right.
They'll just tell you why they dislike it. Sometimes they're right. And sometimes, you make modifications based on those recommendations.
Right.
And I think a leader that's able to say, I don't know everything, and I'm willing to try things. I'm willing to take a risk. Hey, let's give this a shot. See if it works. If it doesn't work, we can back off and try something else.
Yeah.
I think that kind of mentality goes very far in any organization.
I can't remember who said it. It was a CEO of a company, and he was talking about leadership, and he was talking about communication. And he says that when I walk into a meeting and I have all my people, all my managers around me, I want to be the dumbest one in the room. And I thought, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. That means, one, you're hiring right, and you have the right people in place to help you run the company.
I think that's the key to success.
Yeah,
is surrounding yourself with the right people. I think didn't Henry Ford do that as well, or he talked about that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
really, you are who you surround yourself with.
Yeah,
when I'm looking for administrative staff, I'm looking at people. In fact, many of them I would say are much smarter than me.
Mm-hmm.
I just ask the right questions and get them pointed in the right direction. They're amazing people, and they're going to fill my role at some point.
Well, and that's the other part of it too. As a leader, as upper management or administrative staff, you have to be willing to ask questions. And I think too many upper management walk into meetings and just want to say, this is what I want done, rather than ask questions on what other people feel and think should be done. That's a big part of growth in a manager.
I think that's often the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing I've seen in the law enforcement profession is that as people move up through the ranks, they have a tendency to carry with them the rank they had before, and they're unwilling to let go of those duties.
Exactly.
Like the higher you go, the more it's policy, direction, overall view, that 35,000 foot view, versus I need to make sure that this person did X, Y, and Z. They carry with them the previous job when someone else has already replaced that role, and you need to let go and trust those people to do the job.
Yeah, because otherwise what you do, you become a micromanager. You're micromanaging people to do the job that you hired them to do, and yet you're still trying to do it for them, and that never works.
Well, you've been in business a long time. I mean, delegation is an art form. It's not a science.
Correct.
You only delegate to someone what their technical competency will allow them. The better their technical competency, the less you have to watch over it.
Right.
So, I mean, sometimes someone new into an assignment may need a little more oversight until they grow into that role. Then you can back off and give them give them the reins,
Right.
and let them run with it. But delegation's a tough thing. I see a lot of people that have a hard time letting go.
Well, I've seen a lot of people, not people, but businesses that have actually failed due to the lack of delegating. Because when you really break it down, in business especially, and I can't say that this overlays itself into law enforcement or government service, but I know in business for sure that people don't come to work for the money. That's such a huge, big misnomer. People don't come to work because nobody is coming to work. You, me, anybody that thinks, oh man, there's another $40 in my pocket. We don't think about the money at the time. What do we think about? We think about the challenge. We think about having a challenge set in front of us that we can put our minds to work and we can overcome and come up with a solution for a problem. That's what we do on a day-to-day basis. And you take that away from somebody and you become the micromanager and you become hard-nailed, this is my way or the highway. No one wants to work.
No, you don't want a bunch of mindless drones. You want people that are free thinking.
Sure.
You want people that can think outside the box. And this word is definitely overused in the business community, is empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
But they do need to feel that they have some degree of self-direction and self-determination.
Sure.
In helping the organization.
Yeah.
If you take that away from them, they just feel like they're a number.
Well, let me ask you this.
People.
You're in a very unique position. You're in the government, you are law enforcement, and on the other side, you're a business owner. Are you running both the same, or are you running one different than the other?
That's a good question, Mike. In my case, I tend to think that I run them very similar because I'm definitely one of those people, what you see is what you get. I say what's on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hold back on things, and I'm very direct, if you will. But I believe in those things. I teach leadership classes. I've done that in the department many times, as well as for other departments as well. And I espouse those same things: intent-based leadership. Here's where we want to go. Let's hear the ideas on where to go. And depending on what the assignments are, the person that does my roasting for me knows far more about roasting
mm-hmm.
than I ever will. He's the guy working that machine every day, knows the nuances to it. It's the same thing. You watch people in the trades, bricklayers and stuff. It's phenomenal to sit and watch how well they know how to fix minor issues.
Absolutely.
Stuff that just blows my mind. I may want a wall that's 4 feet by 10 feet or whatever, and I don't need to tell him how to build that wall. The guy already has it squared away. It's the same thing with a lot of things. In police work, officers know the job. In fact, they may know the daily interactions far better than I do, or they may even have more innovative solutions on how to deal with the problem that's occurring in the area that they serve. Who am I to dictate how it's done from the top? At work, and same thing in business. I follow 3 things, and they can be applied to the business rules. 1, did the people working for me act within policy? Did they act within the law? And was it moral or ethical? And really, the law part typically comes first, then policy, and then the moral obligation. But for a lot of people, they want to see someone get from A to B the way they would.
Right.
But we know every single one of us will come up with a different way to get from A to B.
Absolutely.
We see it every day. It doesn't mean that way is wrong. In fact, their way might be more efficient than the way I was going to do it. So again, it's letting people have the ability to do that and support them if they follow, if they're playing within the rules, if they're following the law, if they're following policy, if they're, making ethical decisions. You have to support that as a leader, even if it wasn't the one you would have made.
Well, I think what we're talking about is something that I think we're both agreeing on, and that's when you have a problem, you want a solution to the problem. I mean, that's basically what we all do at work. We go to work and we deal with certain problems, whether it's to build a wall, whether it's, dealing with somebody that's unruly, or whether it's, hey, we just need to develop more revenue. Whatever it is, we deal with problems on a daily basis. And there's always multiple ways at times to come up with a solution to fix the problem. And I've always been, I don't care how we fix the problem. We just need to fix the problem. We need to be focused on the same direction. And if we're all going in the same direction, how we get there shouldn't matter. It's just that we all end up at the same point at the same time.
And I think we'd be far more effective in our businesses if we all had that mentality across the board, because then you've got your people engaged.
Right.
And I think once you have your employees, whether it's law enforcement or business employees, engaged in the work they're doing, that's when they're most productive, when they're finding a rewarding experience out of it, where they feel valued, because they are valued. The problem is many organizations don't express how valuable their employees are to the employee.
True. And I think there's also the other part of this. I think that there's a lot of businesses, a lot of either owners, CEOs, presidents of company, whoever it is that's at the top of the organizational chart. They fail to tell everybody, make sure everybody understands what their view and their philosophy and their goal is. And so
that's critical.
Yeah.
It's critical to let them know, what your mission is, what your values are, and those are those guiding principles of whether it's a company or a government organization. That needs to be out to the employees to help them base their decisions to further the goals of that organization.
Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the areas that I see in businesses that flounder, maybe don't fail, but aren't hitting on all cylinders, is because not everybody is aware of what the goals are for the company. So it's important for the leaders to pass the message down. So it should go from the very top president down to his managers, the managers down to the employees, and so forth. And if it's not happening that way, and you're not seeing the results that you want, sitting at the top, you only have yourself to blame. Everything should come top to bottom. And when it comes to leadership, whether it's in business or whether it's in government agencies, you still have to share the goal.
Oh yeah, someone's got to be steering the ship and giving clear, concise direction on where we're going.
Yeah,
and then everyone else should be engaged in making us get to where we're trying to go.
Right.
But again, clear communication is critical.
Yeah.
The other thing is definitely keep communication concise.
Yes.
People lose interest pretty quick when they see long memos come out. But if you have concise goals that can be articulated, simple is always better. I think you go a lot further with that.
In the number of memos, let's not inundate the organization with multiple memos a week. Let's start out, let's do one, and let's see that we're making changes and we're getting the buy-in before we start to send another. Because
in a lot of areas I work, it's definitely, the information that you're acting on needs to be actionable. It needs to be immediate. And what I see a lot, especially in government organizations, is we get hit with a fire hose of information.
Yeah.
It's like, it would be great if I could retain all that, but really I need to know if I'm a beat officer, I need to know what's important to me today in my beat, what are my issues, and what do I need to resolve, that our intelligence units or our analysts are seeing.
Right.
How to work on that. And that jumps into, I don't know if I want to get into the whole CompStat policing model,
oh, hell, why not, man?
Use.
We got time. Let's talk.
But it's intelligence-based policing. And again, a lot of these things tie into the business world. You need to know what issues you're facing. You need to be able to forecast some of these things. But as far as policing goes, we rely now on a lot of analysts to take a look at our crime trends and really come up with, hey, we're seeing an increase in auto thefts in this area of the city, or we're seeing an increase in break-ins. And as administrators, it's our responsibility to look at that and come up with options and solutions to try and reduce those things. I'm not so idealistic to say we'll just make them all go away and it'll be, rainbows and unicorns. But we can definitely make a dent in crime in these different areas when we see it rising. Obviously we're doing less with more, or doing more with less.
More with less. There you go.
More with less.
Yeah. It's funny. I knew exactly what you meant, but yeah, that's true.
Someone would have called us out on that.
Yeah.
So, it is critical to do the best you can with those limited resources. And I think the trend has been to go to this intelligent led policing. The CompStat model started in New York City, where they looked at the different issues and they would assign those tasks in those areas to the division commanders. And then they would hold them accountable. Hey, what have you done to do this? Did you take these steps? Did you allocate resources? What were your results? It's not working. So what are you doing now to fix that or try something different? I think it's a great model. And I think a lot of cities are looking into those because of the reduced resources. Is it the ideal solution? No, but it's not a bad concept. Again, if you have more officers, I think you will see less crime, and you'll also see less negative outcomes from officer-suspect interactions. I mean, there will always be some that do harm to a police officer, or they're willing to do harm to someone else, and the outcome may not go the way that they would want. But I think you have more officers out there as a deterrent. I also think just that interaction helps make a community feel safer.
Right. Well, and if we look at it in the right manner and not in some, politicized manner, more police officers out in the field helps deter crime. But it isn't because we have more police officers being big brother and hanging over the top of everyone and squashing crime. It's that there's more officers out there to almost deter the crime, because if people have the intent of doing harm to somebody, whether it's robbing them, whether it's beating them, whatever that it is, if they have the intent of doing that, and they know that there is the patrol cars aren't around a lot, police officers are busy in other sectors, they're going to feel more enabled to do what it is that they are wanting to do. Where if we have more officers out there, it isn't as though they're breathing down everybody's neck. It isn't as though they're looking for the wrong person to sit down on the curb and go through their stuff. It isn't like that. It's just that they're there, and it's a deterrent because they know that they're more readily available. Am I making sense?
Very much so. I saw one study recently that showed for every 10 officers, it reduces homicide numbers by 1 in a city. I'm not going to speak well to it because I haven't read it for a while. It was maybe a month or two ago. But that was one thing I keyed in on, was the fact that for every 10 officers, there was a reduction in probably, one of the worst crimes anyone can commit just by having more presence out there. Right.
And I think that's where the disconnect with politicizing demeaning the law enforcement community is so harmful, because they're making it sound as, more police officers we're just putting more bad guys in the field, where it's just the opposite. We're putting these good guys out in the field to hold bad guys more accountable for their actions and make the whole world a safer place for all of us that live in it. And
that gets into a whole nother area, Mike.
Yeah, it does.
Because I know the officers are doing their jobs, and they're putting people behind bars and taking them off the street, the ones that are, really causing harm to the community. Another thing we're seeing nationwide is a number of prosecutors that are not fulfilling their role and kicking these people right out the back door. I actually see it more with the prosecutors in general than judges giving short sentences, although that does occur as well. We see people the judges too in some areas, are letting people out with a very low bail amount or no bail. In some of these cities and counties, they've actually enacted, no cash bail policies because they felt it disproportionately impacted certain segments of society. And so, we're seeing a lot more dangerous criminals nationwide getting out on the street when they probably should be sitting in jail until trial.
Right. Yeah, and I don't see that particular issue changing anytime soon, because it seems like, for whatever reason, the prosecutors, who I think historically have always been a lot more pro law enforcement and pro safety for the community, has really turned a different direction. I know LA County, where we live, specifically has really changed their direction.
I think, though, it's gone so far one way to lack of accountability that a lot of people are finally opening their eyes. I know a little further north from you, San Francisco has been facing some major challenges, and I think there's been even talk of a recall election maybe for their district attorney there.
I heard that, yes.
Because of the issues that they've been facing, the fact that crime's just been rampant.
Right.
The police can only do so much. They're only the first step in a long criminal justice process. There's so much importance placed on the shoulders of our district attorneys, our prosecutors, to put these folks behind bar. Again, it's just accountability. I'm not saying everyone needs the book thrown at them, but they need to have a penalty for committing a violation of the law.
Yeah, I think that when we say, they need to be put behind bars, it isn't, somebody that's, petty theft is, going to go to San Quentin for, 6 years. We're not saying that. But we are saying is that when you have convicted felons that are continuing to break the law, they're not changing. So the only choice we have as a society is to segregate them away from law-abiding citizens, because
we do that with our kids, right? It's called timeout.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. If they cannot live in a society of law-abiding people, regardless of what the area is, just because it's a poor area and the area actually has a higher crime rate, doesn't mean that everybody that's living there are criminals. It doesn't mean that everybody that is living there are bad people. They're not. 99% of them are just hardworking people going to work, raising a family, and trying to get by the best they can. That's, and where they live just happens to be where they live. But we want to take the socioeconomic area into account for this person that's doing criminal activity, and give him a break because it's in a poorer area and he can't, they're saying he can't afford bail, so we're going to do a no bail, or we're going to do a lighter bail, and he gets back out and goes right back to doing criminal activity. Look at the crime, and then make the decision. Protect the people.
It's interesting to see a lot of these large cities that have defund movements. Mm-hmm. It's not coming from those lower socioeconomic communities.
No.
It's coming from more affluent ones, more academically educated, I guess, than from the inner cities where they have high crime in their neighborhoods, where they deal with it on a regular basis. And the vast majority are happy in relieved to see police officers working in their neighborhood.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because let me ask you this question, just rhetorically speaking, is, we'll take LA County. If LA City defunds their police department and they have less officers on the street, they have less protection for law-abiding citizens, do you really think that that's going to stop or in any way impact Beverly Hills, where they have their own police department? Do you think they're going to defund? No, they'll probably put more money into it and protect their city that much more.
You bring up an interesting point, Mike, is one, the wealthy will always have protection, whether it's the police or private security.
Right.
I mean, you want to talk Hollywood, you're talking, A-list stars that make a lot of money that already have their own security details.
Absolutely.
Those kind of things. And these communities can, either be gated communities with their own security forces, those type of things. There will always be security options for those that have the wealth to do
Absolutely.
it. The people that need it most, the people that need it from the government the most are those ones living in lower socioeconomic areas where they are seeing more daily street crime. We all have white collar crimes happening around us all the time. Credit card fraud, we don't pay a lot of attention to it, right? As people, because unless it affects us.
Unless it affects you on that particular day or whatever, and then as soon as you've gone to the bank and the bank says, "Don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. We'll put the money back in your account." You take a deep breath, go on your way, and then you forgot about it again.
But imagine the stress of living in a community where there's gang violence or drug violence, there's shootings every night. I mean, that is a constant stressor to someone's well-being.
Yeah.
And like you said, and I agree with you, more than 99% of people in those communities are just trying to eke out a living and take care of their families and try and improve the situation for themselves.
Right.
And we as citizens need to be pushing our elected leaders to support law enforcement because of those communities.
Well, let's talk about that too. Let's talk about the elected leaders that are pushing to defund, if they're one of that group that wants to defund, and they're pushing their city council, and the city council is voting, and do you think that mayor, do you think that the people on the city council that have police protection around them on a day-to-day basis, or have the money to have their own private security while they're, in office? Do you think they're willing to give that up as part of the whole defunding? Absolutely not. So what are they going to do?
I think part of that is that disconnect as well, like we've talked about. The higher up you go, if you're not keeping in touch with really what's going on the ground, you have a hard time seeing it.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're willing to give those things up because they do make them feel safe. I mean, they are safer because of it.
Because of the police officers that are surrounded. But then that just takes us back. They're not giving up their protection, but they're willing to take it away from the citizens that are in the lower economic environments.
Well, I think one outcome that they're not thinking of or don't think of is that if they defund and there's less police, and we're already seeing it, there's more violence towards police because of the attitudes portrayed by the media and some of the elected officials towards law enforcement, basically othering law enforcement, saying that they're the bad guys as well, which makes them much easier targets because these criminals that are willing to do harm to the police feel that it's not really wrong for them to do that.
Right.
Because of what they're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
I do think some of that will change over time. I think people are getting fed up with increased crime rates. And I think they're seeing that some of these officials are the ones creating this mess. One thing that really shocked me, to be honest, over the last 6 months or a year, I don't remember the exact date Ferguson happened, but we had, or not Ferguson, but Minneapolis, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. So
when that happened, it was a dark day for the nation, because of the actions of an officer, whether criminal or otherwise, it should have been handled better. We all agree on that.
Right.
What I really didn't see from a lot of agencies, especially larger ones, was them going out, leadership going out and expressing why they support their police department.
Right.
Our police department doesn't have these issues because of X, Y, and Z. We have these, national accreditations. We have this internal management policy. We have, bias training and things to just help understand other people in your community, to just be better, well-rounded professional police officers. We didn't see very many. There were quite a few that came out, but I don't know that they got a lot of media coverage. Mm-hmm. But those are the things that a lot of cities needed to have happen. And I think it would have reduced some of the protest issues in those cities had there been a very strong, united front on, we're happy with our police department. We're always looking for improvements that we can do. We're always open to suggestions.
Right.
But I support, our elected officials need to come out and say, I support our police department. And I think there was a lot of fear in doing that for a lot of them.
I think that's the problem, is that there's a lot of political fear of saying the wrong thing. It's, as we first started out, when we were talking about censorship, and we were talking about Joe Rogan and all. Well, the same thing is true in the political environment. If you say something that may have merit, makes total sense, but it doesn't fit the rhetoric of whatever group is controlling the media at that particular time, you stand the risk of being demonized in front of everybody. Whether it's right, whether it's wrong, they will twist it to their own way of thinking. And so I think that a lot of politicians that I think would let me put it this way. I believe that there are a number of politicians, good men, good women, that want to do the right thing and are probably trying behind closed doors to do the right thing, but are afraid for their political career to stand up and speak out about it. Because as soon as they do, you look at some of the politicians, governor in Florida, senators in Texas, and wherever that they're at, when they're speaking out against what is going on, I mean, it's horrific at their opponents who come back and not only attack them by what their stand and their position is, but then how personal they get. When they will try to dig up as much garbage on anybody just to discredit them, and rather than let somebody have their view, say their opinion. And so I think that from what you're saying, I think that there are good politicians out there that are just afraid to really stand up and say, I support my police department. Because
I think that's a big issue, and I think we would have had very different outcomes had those folks stepped up to the plate.
I agree.
At the right time, which was as this was occurring, and I think we would have seen less protesting or more peaceful protesting, and I mean actual peaceful protesting, not what CNN calls peaceful protesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Because again, everyone that I work with fully supports the Constitution and people's right to assemble and speak out, and in the free speech of, we live in the U.S. We can say contrary things that we're unhappy with what the government's doing. Right. What we don't do is burn down our communities.
Right. Well, in the irony too, because one of the bigger political arguments and situations that we have is immigration and people coming in across the border. Well, why do you think we have so many people that want to come here? It's because this is one of the greatest countries in the world to live in. This is one of the countries that you have that freedom of speech. to be able to say whatever it is. You and I sitting right here on this podcast, opening up and talking and sharing our feelings about something. There's a lot of places in this world where you can't do that. And these immigrants are pouring in to our country illegally, some legal, some illegal. You won't get into that debate, but because they see this as an amazing place to come and raise a family and have a life and live. And
it is a great place. I mean, it is a land of opportunity. You know,
truly.
People can come from nothing and, you know, build these companies and you know, create lasting development, you know, for their family and for other people. You know, the whole, you know, I look at starting a company, and I'm definitely not there yet, but at some point I'm going to be able to offer opportunities to other people to start into the, you know, career field or offer jobs to people. I think that's important. I think it's important for people to recognize that, yeah, a lot of these people are coming into our country for a better life. In fact, I'll share a personal note here. What a lot of people don't know is I'm half Costa Rican. So my mother was a legal immigrant. She passed away some years ago, but was a legal immigrant from Costa Rica, as well as my grandma. So I'm familiar with the legal immigration process, and I know how they felt about, you know, illegal immigration. And clearly we do have a problem with that. And part of that problem is we don't have a very clear-cut or efficient process to get people into the country who want to be here and meet, you know, the criminal background checks that are required to be there. So definitely we contribute to that problem by not having a streamlined method. And I'm not saying that everyone should get in, because, you know, people that have committed crimes, especially felonies in other countries, probably ought not to be in the country. But again, that's above my pay grade. But people should have the opportunity to. But
it's a fair viewpoint, because there aren't any other countries that you can just walk into and, you know, legal or illegal. And there's countries that just won't give you citizenship. There are countries that don't allow you to come in illegally. And yet we, again, being demonized as a country because we're supposedly the free country with wealth, that we're saying, no, wait a minute. No, not everybody gets to come in. And if you're going to come in, and I can't remember, there's a senator who said, you know, everybody's welcome to come in. That's our culture. That's who we are as a nation. Everybody's welcome to come in. Just come in the front door. You know, don't need to sneak around the back. Come in the front door and you're welcome. Go through the process and you're welcome. Is it arduous? Yeah, it is. But if it's really worth having, isn't it worth putting out whatever effort you have to do to come in legally? I would think so.
I think so too. I definitely think the process needs to be more efficient. For example, I've got another friend who is recently got married to a woman in Ukraine. And actually the process of getting her over here, especially now in the tumultuous times they're facing there, is difficult, because I just found out that she would have to have an interview with the embassy staff once her paperwork's approved. Well, currently the non-essential embassy staff has been evacuated.
Oh, geez.
From Ukraine. So they're doing what they can to try and get it sorted out. But, you know, definitely the process is not efficient in certain circumstances.
No. And I think, you know, that's just an overworked, understaffed issue. I think that, well, that, and also it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of time involved. And I just think that's probably, it's just a shortage of staff that isn't there to take care of the workload. You know, just, which brings me to a point, you know, we'll kind of shift gears here a little bit. Let's go back to law enforcement and the recruitment of law enforcement. Have we seen, is the tide kind of turning a little bit? I just on the outside, and you know that I have family that's in law enforcement. So in hearing what I hear from them. It seems like in the very beginning of last year before, when a lot of this, when the pandemic was at its high, at its peak, and when we have, the talk of defunding was, at its peak, and it seemed like, I don't know if there was a lack of interest in going into law enforcement, or people were just afraid to say, I want to be a police officer. And so it kind of kept, I think, whatever it was, the recruitment really became difficult at a period of time. Are you noticing a change, a turnaround?
I want to be optimistic, but I don't think we've turned that corner yet. I think things have stabilized to a large degree. I still think there's a high degree of attrition of people leaving sooner than they probably would have in the past because of the environment we're dealing with now.
Right.
I also feel that, again, I mean, there's so much scrutiny now that it really makes people second guess coming into this profession because of that dynamic that's going on right now. I think, because of defund, we've seen some significant pay raises in the law enforcement community to slow down the attrition, but I don't think it's the point that's really attracting new talent yet. And I don't know that you can buy your way out of this. It has to be, again, socially acceptable to be a police officer. And I know, Mike, there's plenty of people that support us. They're the ones that don't necessarily speak out, and I don't see them out in protests. I know the majority of America supports law enforcement. The problem is I think a lot of our younger generation gets their information off of different social media platforms and things, and all they see is this negativity towards policing. They don't see the positive that's done every day.
Right.
They feel that a lot of law enforcement is just out there for the power, or, badge heaviness, if you will.
Right.
I don't think we've really turned that corner to get folks interested in doing the job anymore. They've seen the risk. They've seen how hard it is. And now the position has been, somewhat demonized by the press, by some political leaders, by social media outlets. So I think the tide needs to turn, and we need to show that there are plenty of professional police officers that are out there every day, busting their tail to try and make their community safer, try and be more engaged with the community. And one thing I have seen over the last year is more police departments that are really trying to take an active role in changing those viewpoints have taken a much more aggressive role by utilizing social media, by utilizing the news, by getting information out, which in our past episodes that we've talked, I've mentioned that one of the biggest lacking points of police departments is the failure to educate the public on why things are done in the fashion that we handle them in.
Right.
It's not a trade secret. What we do isn't by telling people why we do something, why we handle domestic violence call this way, why we handle a hostage situation this way, why we handle a bank robbery this way. It's not anything secret. And I think if people understand those things and the difficulties and complexities that can come into it, I think they'll be far more supportive of their police agencies when they understand why those procedures take place.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, one of the things that is going to come out of a lot of this, the one thing anyways, and that's a bit more transparency on the side of law enforcement. I don't think I've really ever seen, and you brought up a good point about social media. I've got a number of local PDs in our area that I follow on Instagram. Well, 5 years ago or whatever it was, there wasn't an agency around that was on Instagram. And they not only, they're not just showing, well, we've got a carnival in the park and our officers are there and showing all the good. They're showing robberies that had happened. They're showing pursuits that had happened, and they're being more open about their roles and what they're doing and why they're doing it on Instagram. I mean, granted, now the person that's maybe on the far left and thinking about defending isn't going to follow Orange County Sheriff's Department, for example. But if you do, they are really a lot more open about what's going on in the community and also within their department. And I've never seen that before. And I think they got to be applauded for that transparency.
It's huge, and it's. I mean, that's the change in society. We're extremely open and transparent because of, the opportunity of social media, things like this, where everyone does have a voice now, and everyone can get their voice heard, unless it's censored. But they can get their voice out.
Yeah.
And I think departments are seeing that. I know in my police life, we just recently hired a new PR director. And I'm sure he may see this at some point, but he's phenomenal. Like, the guy just goes out. He pushes the positive stuff that goes on, like you said, neighborhood carnivals.
Yeah.
But he's out there at crime scenes, trying to see how we can educate the public on what's going on and not jeopardize an investigation.
Right.
We're very proactive on getting information out to the public because the public is our partner. For example, I'm getting a rash of baggage thefts where people are just walking into an airport and grabbing bags and walking out. And, we located one suspect. Two of my detectives went out and served a search warrant on a house and found a number of bags. And it was really amazing to get our public relations person on board. And within 24 hours, we had a press release out because we were still looking for one of that outstanding suspects. I don't think we've caught her yet, but to start engaging the community in those ways. Hey, we're seeing this.
Right.
Can you help us with this? Can you be aware of these things that are going on? And I think we owe it to the community to let them know where crime is occurring and how,
Well, I think also too, rather than looking at it as you owe anybody anything, I think it's just partnering up with the community, saying, hey, we're here for you. We're here to work with you. We're here to protect you. We're here to serve you. All those things, as you see a LA City police vehicle drive by, and on the side of the door where it's LA City PD, it also says to protect and to serve on the door. And to take that emblem and take that saying to heart, you have to be transparent. You have to be a partner. You have to be out there. It is the mentality of having a police department that is over the top of citizens is long gone. And I think that you agree, I agree, and I think it's better for everybody because at the end of the day, you're a law enforcement officer. But at the end of the day, you come home into your home, surrounded by your neighbors that aren't law enforcement, with children, going to schools, doing dad stuff. I mean, the thing at the end of the day is we're all in this shit together. They don't have a city that's set up just for law enforcement to go live, and they got their own little bubble, and when they get off work, none of this stuff affects them. You're a part of the community. You're part, you've got a family. You've got and when my boys were in law enforcement, one of the first things when they first started going into the academy and this was their career, I made a point to tell them, don't ever forget, it's just a job. That's all it is. It's just a job. You got different responsibilities. You got different tasks. You're looked upon differently. But at the end of the day, it's just a job. And you're going to go home, and you're still going to coach baseball, and you're going to go to Campfire Girls, or you're going to do whatever it is that you do as a dad, as a husband, and that's.
It's so important to be balanced, to have balance in your life. I've got a lot of friends that are fellow law enforcement people. I also have a lot of friends that are not law enforcement and that have very different political viewpoints than me.
Sure.
It's good. We're all friends. It keeps me balanced, keeps me open to hearing, contrary ideas.
Right.
Of course, I tell them they're wrong, but it's good to have that. You can't just live in an echo chamber, regardless of what your job is.
Right. And it's not saying I'm not saying that because police officers are walking around acting special. They're not, but it's that transparency so that everybody else can see that this police officer in his vehicle, in his black and white, in his uniform, they're not sending him back to the station at the end of the shift and hanging him up in the locker and plugging him in for the next day. He's getting undressed. He's putting his shorts on. He's putting his flip flops on. He's getting.
I don't know, Mike. If Boston Dynamics keeps building those robot dogs and people that can walk, we may have RoboCop before you know it.
Yeah, you'll be out of a job. But
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Yeah, better get that coffee gig going. But it's really important for everybody to see police officers as real human beings, flesh, blood, with families, with worries, with anxieties, with all the same things that they have. They're not, and I think that's how the press has taken this whole thing with defunding and really tried to show law enforcement as almost not being human.
Well,
not
it's
having
dehumanized,
feelings.
and then you see some of the folks that I don't always agree with the humor, because sometimes I think some of the officers take it over the top. But
Sure.
For example, there was that gentleman out of Idaho that cracked a joke about LeBron James, or contacted. I don't know if you saw that TikTok video. It was pretty viral.
Oh, I remember that. Yes.
And he ends up getting let go over that. But I thought his humor was appropriate. It was timely.
Sure.
And it softened everything up.
Yeah.
Some others I've seen, toe the line on what I think is acceptable to do while you're in uniform. Mm-hmm. But in general, those type of Instagram pages and those type of TikToks where officers are out being human, being like people need to see that there is humor in the job, that we're not, like you said, it's not mindless.
Right.
They're people too, and they have struggles, and they like a laugh as much as the next person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, where some of these politicians have done such a huge disservice to the men and women in blue that, it's just irresponsible, because, police officers of all sorts, whether it's, troopers, PD, sheriff, doesn't matter what the agency is. They're just good people going to work, raising families, and wanting to do. They got into the business. They got into law enforcement mostly for the right reasons.
Yeah, for service to others.
Yes. Yeah. And to have that diluted and taken away from them is just unconscionable. It's just, I think of, and I can say it, Lightfoot in Chicago is the worst of the worst. And, for me as a citizen, to see a community leader be so blatant with their disregard for law enforcement, which is really saying a disregard for the safety of her constituents.
Oh, and you've picked the city with the highest murder rate in the country.
Yeah, yeah.
It's concerning to me that you don't see much more outcry for that level of violence. I believe it's close to 700 people a year are killed in homicides there, if not more.
Yeah.
What's being done? I mean, it's not just a law enforcement issue. There's definitely a social side to it.
Yeah.
But how are we having that in a first world country? How are we having one city that has such a high crime rate? I'm prior to the last year or so, New York City's had an incredibly low homicide rate for a city of that size.
Right.
Crazy low. Like I'm just floored by it. Although it's crept back up in the last, with the defund movement, we've seen their homicide rate go up. But for a city like Chicago, I mean, they've got close to 13,000 authorized staffing for their police department, that we're seeing this recurring crime day in and day out. So is it the police? Is it the prosecutors? Is it the judges? Is it the lack of support at the politicians' level? I mean, these are all questions you need to be asking.
Right. And I don't think anybody really has an absolute answer on that, because it's a cross section of so many different issues that would bring it to that. All we do know is it's out of control. And, and going back to business and going back to when you have issues and you have problems and nobody has set guidelines to go on, you better look at the top of the food chain, because somewhere, somehow, from the top down, they're either disconnect or they're sending the wrong message. And how we can allow that in a country like we have in the United States, to allow a city to continue down that path without some intervention, I don't know. It boggles me. When we can disagree to certain levels for cities like, say, San Francisco, or take LA or whatever, but we're not having those same kind of problems that Chicago's having. We're having,
not even close.
Not even close.
You have different crimes. I mean, San Francisco, I look at, and I don't know if it was, you can tell me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I think it was just San Francisco that decriminalized retail theft, basically, by saying you could steal up to, I don't know, $800.
There was some stupid number of,
and now you have these organized groups going into stores, sending people in, and each individual person is stealing
up to that number,
800, and then running out of the store. I believe one of the pharmacies, Rite Aid or Walgreens, shut down, 17 stores in San Francisco because of the theft. I mean, clearly those policies are out of line. I mean, this isn't, Jean Valjean stealing bread for his family.
Don't you wonder sometimes? You think about, okay, what was the city council thinking that night when they approved that? I mean, what was going through their head?
I would be appalled if my business was operating there.
Yeah,
I'd be appalled, because basically you've increased risk to my business.
Yeah,
because some people will take that as a green light to go in and to steal.
Yeah, they absolutely do. That change in policy didn't protect anybody. What it did is, I think originally it was probably set up because there was such a problem with homeless theft, and then arresting the homeless, and they don't have the money, and we're just filling the jail. So I think that behind the scenes there's something that say, this is ridiculous. We're arresting too many people that are homeless, and they're out in the street and they need help, or they need whatever, and so we're going to change the policy. But you would think that people in that position that were voted in to protect the city, protect the constituents, you would think that they would have thought the whole thing out prior to coming up with such a ridiculous policy that, handcuffs law enforcement and opens the door for more organized crime to come in and do whatever they want to do without punishment.
It does create that. The other thing that I've seen in the defunding movement, I don't think I touched on it, was we are going to see more negative outcomes because there are less officers out there. Mm-hmm. They're exhausted with the work that they have to do. There's a lot of places that are incurring mandatory overtime for officers because they're short-staffed. The recruitment issue, if we start bringing in, I don't want to use the term substandard, but if we lower our standards to get applicants through, we're going to continue hiring people that are potential liabilities out there on the street,
Right.
not only to the department, but actually to the community.
Right.
I mean, we'll see people that are going into the job for the wrong reasons and maybe don't have the critical thinking skills to accurately assess a situation or good judgment in how to handle that situation. We're going to see more incidents of use of force violations. We may see more incidents of individual officer corruption or misconduct because of that, because we are not hiring the most professional people. This defunding movement is going to have long-lasting effects.
I agree.
For us to turn the ship around and get moving in the right direction again.
I agree. And even if, and you made this statement earlier about, officers making more money and incentivizing people to stay through higher wages, and higher wages for recruitment is not going to be a good way to go, because now you've got people coming in that are thinking only about the money or the benefits instead of thinking about the job. Because the way it's always been in the past, and you ask anybody that, at least for me, anyone that I've ever known in law enforcement, why are you in law enforcement? And it was almost unanimous with, I want to help.
Oh, it was hands down the most exciting career choice I could have made. And when I was when I got hired with the agency I work with, I went to work at 23 years old making $12.50 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to go around thinking, man, I'd do this job for free, because I had so much fun every day going in. Every day was something new. It was exciting.
Yeah. It's very exciting for a young guy. I mean,
but then I look back now and I'm like, I did this job for $12 an hour. I must have either been crazy or I really was dedicated to serving the community.
It goes back to my statement earlier about people don't always go to work for the money. Once they're in, the money may hold them hostage because they can't, they get accustomed to living at whatever level that their income is at. So they can't just up and leave. So it may at one point hold them hostage, but people don't go to work every day thinking about the money. They think about the challenge. They think about the enjoyment. They think about who they're working with. There's any number of things that you can think about why people go to work. But, definitely excitement and, just something about being a police officer that you can't really explain to anybody, because you are in a role of responsibility to others. And it's, I think safety and keeping people safe and doing the right thing is paramount.
It's an extremely unique position. The challenges that come up in it are so unique to law enforcement, just because it's so random. 1 minute you'll be dealing with a barking dog, or you'll be dealing with someone complaining that my neighbor's blowing leaves into my lawn in the fall.
Uh-huh.
And then next thing you know, you're on, some family that, assault, child abuse case where a child has been killed by a family member.
Right.
I mean, there's just so many different things that can happen. 1 minute you're happy, 1 minute you're dealing with a incredibly stressful situation that you realistically need to disassociate yourself from while you're on scene to just deal with it, because the human side of you is going to want to do something that's probably illegal.
Yeah. A quick story, when I was my first week after coming out of the academy, my first week actually on the job, still in training, but there was a burglary that had happened. And so we came into the area, had, a description of the suspect, the area that he was in. So we kind of had the area surrounded, and I was told the apartment building had a ladder going up the side to the roof to go check the rooftop. So you could picture, it's beautiful full moon out. It was a summer day, summer evening. It was probably 10 o'clock, so it was kind of warm. And I'm up on top of the roof, and I'm looking over the edges, and I'm trying to see, if there's a suspect. And I'm just thinking, I want to catch this guy and get him off the street. And I stopped for a minute, and I stepped back from the edge, and I looked up at the sky, and I'm thinking, this is the coolest fucking job ever. You know? But you know, you just have moments like that, you know, and that's been 30 years ago, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I mean, there were just certain things that happened that just, you know, you just recall.
No, there's days where it's definitely the most fun job in the world, and there's days where it's the most tedious job.
Oh yeah, you know, and you get opportunities to do really cool things. You know, my son told me a story that, you know, a lady ran a red light, flips on the lights, pulls her over. Car's kind of, you know, in sad shape, and elderly lady driving the car, and he, you know, went through driver's license, the insurance, and do you know why I pulled you over? And no, sir, I don't. She was really pleasant, and he said, well, you ran through that red light. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't. She was very apologetic, and he looked at her and he said, you can't afford this ticket, can you? No, sir, I really can't. Folded up the registration, the insurance, handed it back, said, you have a nice day, just drive careful. And he told, that's probably been I don't know, 15 years ago or whatever. And he still tells that story. That's a feel-good story to him, not really for other people, but you get opportunities to do the right thing that make you feel good.
You do, you really do. And it's, you know, I'm looking back as I'm in my twilight time on the department, and it's, you know, I'm glad of the experiences that I did have, you know, and obviously in the role I'm in now, my experiences are more like handling budgets and writing new policies and
taking someone's luggage out to their car,
helping people with luggage. But it is rewarding. It has been, and there's experiences that I've done that no one else outside of law enforcement will have ever experienced.
Right.
Some good, some bad. You know, I had someone ask me a while back, just, you know, non-law enforcement friend, just asked me how many dead bodies have I seen? And I had to stop, and I realized I've lost count. I have no idea. It was so many, but like I don't dwell on that because some of that stuff's pretty dark.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole other part of law enforcement that I don't think the average person really sees or understands. So they don't see it for sure, but they don't understand.
Well, I mentioned this to my kids once. I'm like, really, how many deaths does an average person see in their lifetime?
Right.
And I'll bet you it's less than a half dozen where they're actually seeing the dead body at the time of death or shortly after.
Right.
You know, I'm not counting funerals, okay?
No.
But actual a scene where someone's died of natural causes or a car accident or things like that, it's probably even less than that. It may even be less than 4.
Right. Or
in a lifetime.
Or even take that one step further, and how many, you know, average person has seen a horrific death where it's just unpleasant in all aspects to even look at or to be around. Or, I mean, and those are things that happen, and those are things that need to be attended to, and those are things that, you know, very few people can deal with.
It's some of this. I get tied back on my educating the public. Police officers deal with a lot of trauma,
right,
for themselves as well as, you know, basically they're taking it for the community, right?
Right.
They're going to these scenes so you don't have to. The other thing that police officers see is violence acted on them,
right?
You know, violence to other people, you know, whether it's a spousal abuse or domestic abuse or sexual abuse. You know, these things happen all the time, and there are a lot of victims and perpetrators in these cases that are out there. And law enforcement has to deal with those scenes. Mm-hmm. And when law enforcement has to use violence, it never looks like the movies. No. I think people have a very different idea because they're not dealing with those issues of people that don't follow the rules.
Right.
I mean, you and I, if an officer's pointing a gun at me, you know, my hands are up. What do you want me to do? You know,
I'm not moving fast. I'm not,
But they can't imagine that there's people that, even with a gun pointed on them, will still try and do harm to that police officer. It just does not make sense to them.
Right.
Because in their world, people don't act like that.
Right.
In law enforcement, you see people that just do the most bizarre things,
Right.
and that just are not really making good decisions, especially the ones that commit violence on others. So when an officer has to do violence to prevent violence, it looks ugly. It will never look pretty. And again, I think that's an education thing that we fail at in society and in police departments. And really, like when I was in school, and probably the same for you, when you were in junior high or high school, you probably got in fisticuffs with someone, and the next thing you know, you're best buddies.
Right.
Most kids now have never been in any type of fight or scuffle. I'm not saying that they should be.
No, I understand what you're saying.
But they don't have any frame of reference to like, fighting's not really that fun.
No, it's not. I always tell everybody, I've always, since my 20s, my teens, I was always a tall, skinny kid. But, in my 20s, I started filling out and I'm 6'2" and 200, 210, 220, whatever I might be at whatever given time. I was always, asked, number one, did you play sports? Did you, play football when you were a kid? I wouldn't have messed with you, that kind of mentality. And I always tell them, I said, first of all, I didn't play too many sports. I tried to, but I was too skinny and I was too slow. And, so sports wasn't my thing. Surfing, I was okay, but team sports wasn't. And as far as getting in fight, I've learned a long time ago, I don't want to fight because I'm not good at it. And I always end up being hurt. Win, lose, draw, it doesn't matter. You're still hurt. That's why I don't understand the MME guys that get in there and pound each other. That hurts. That doesn't feel comfortable. So, police officers.
They're doing it in the right place, the right environment.
That's right. But along those lines, that's one of the things that I try to convey to people, in whether it's a fight or whether it's an officer-involved shooting. I said, police officers they didn't get up and go to work thinking they're going to shoot somebody. They don't.
No.
Nobody. These guys are human beings. And like I try to keep telling everybody, they're family men. They're dads, they're husbands, they're brothers, they're sisters, because we can't.
At the end of the day, the officers just want to get home at night.
They just want to go home at night.
Else. I'm tired. I want to get home.
Yeah. And thank God I've never been involved in an officer shooting ever. Had to have gun out, had to have, I don't want to say it was close. All I'm saying is that I'm fortunate enough I was never involved in a shooting. And the people that I know that were involved in shootings, honest to God, never recovered. They never recovered. Nobody talks about that. It's
traumatic.
Yeah.
Even if it's even for the right reasons.
Yeah.
It's traumatic to take another person's life.
Yeah.
And I think there's another thing that the public doesn't know. Most police officers, go their entire career without having to fire their gun.
Right.
Do we pull it out a lot? Oh, yeah. You bet.
Yeah.
We do. Is there a lot of close calls? Yes, there's plenty where the decision of the person you're pointing the gun at was the right decision and they complied.
Right.
But the vast majority don't get involved in shootings.
No, but
in an entire career.
Yeah. And thank God, because like I was saying, the people that I have known that have been involved in shootings never recovered from that. They never really got over it. They could never really shake it. And that to me speaks volumes of who they are as a person, what their character is, that they are bothered by it. But the way that the media wants to, show the officer or officer intent or what, as though these men and women get up in the morning and pre-planned some type of a shooting. And it's so far from the truth. And it just irritates me when I hear people talking so cavalier about an officer-involved shooting, because the first thing I think about is that poor guy.
There's so much trauma as soon as that trigger gets pulled that happens to the officer. Not necessarily intentionally, but as soon as that trigger's pulled, they're now a homicide suspect.
Yes.
Right? They're not necessarily treated the same way, but a lot of things procedurally are exactly the same.
The same, yeah. Yeah.
We have homicide investigators coming out to look at the scene because they have committed a homicide, right?
Yes.
It's killing a person.
Yeah.
Justification comes after that.
Right.
So, they get relieved of duty. They get put on administrative leave. They're sent home away from their work family. They lose touch with their day-to-day contacts unless people are very diligent in calling them at home and visiting. I think in a lot of ways we do a disservice to sending these guys home and saying, stay away. I think, in fact, they should be kept,
Close.
in a not a patrol assignment, but kept in the building doing
Yes.
something
Doing
so they
something.
can interact with their team.
So they don't feel lost. They don't feel like they're ostracized and pushed off the side. Can you imagine the agony and the stress of having been involved in the shooting to begin with? And then you're carrying that load with you. Now you're sent home. And as you said, you are a homicide suspect going through the procedures and the investigation and the questioning and
in your head you're already wondering, did I do X, Y, and Z? Did I cover
Yes.
my bases on this?
Yeah.
Did I make the right call?
yeah,
Is it gonna, are these people that are gonna second guess me because they have the time to look at everything in a very slow manner, not dynamic? Are
right.
they gonna side against me?
Yeah.
Or are they gonna say, yeah, you
Yeah.
did the right thing at the time?
Am I going to prison for doing what I thought was right at the time? I felt justified at the time. Am I going to? And they're carrying all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And no one.
I think that's one area police departments across the country could improve on, is keeping
I
their
agree.
officers on the job,
Yes.
maybe in a lower stress assignment,
Yeah.
helping in
Yeah.
detectives
Yeah.
or something, not actually hitting the street, but they need to be around their their work family members,
Yeah.
so they don't feel ostracized.
Yeah. I just
They feel that support.
before we move on to another subject and get to talk about the coffee company, I want to close this out by saying that any police officers that may listen to this particular podcast, I want them to know that the majority of people that I talk to, and I'm out in the field and I'm on construction sites and I'm talking to owners of businesses and I'm talking to, guys that I surf with, everybody is supportive of the police department, of the police officers and the work that they do. What we are hearing today is from a small group that somehow, some way got a voice and gets to be heard and gets to talk people down. But in the real world that I live in, the real world of the people that I talk to, love police officers, support police officers, and think that all of them, not just here in California, not just here in LA County and Orange County, but across the nation, are doing an amazing job. And if they're listening to this, or, you're talking and you being an officer yourself and me having boys that are in the department, in the law enforcement, you know what? You're so appreciated, and don't let the rhetoric get everybody down. The tide will change at some point in time.
It'll come, Mike. I know one you made me recollect. The fact that working at the airport is very unique.
Right.
Is like my officers are fairly happy. Like morale is good. Their interactions with the public. I noticed in my first week there, if I'd go walk into the terminals and walk the concourses in uniform, I couldn't make it from one end to the other without someone stopping and saying, hey, thank you for your service. Mm-hmm. Hey, we appreciate what you do. Don't believe what you see on the news. I mean, it's nonstop to where I'm like, wow, I'm never going to make it to the other side of the airport because people keep stopping. Or if I stop to eat inside the terminal, someone's like, let me get that.
Yeah.
And I was like, you don't need to get mine. Get one of my guys. But
yeah,
it's the gesture that shows that society still supports us.
Yeah.
In fact, I brought out a lieutenant recently who has been on the department for 35 years. if he watches this program, he'll laugh. But he was my very first sergeant that I worked for when I hired on. When I finally got out of the academy, and he came out, and in his first week, I'm like, "What do you think?" Because he's definitely an inner city guy, likes the action, likes things going on, and he's like, "It's different." And I gave it some time, and a week later, I'm like, "What do you think of this place?" He goes, "Everyone is nice to me." Those are his terms. Everyone is nice to me. And he goes, "And the officers all seem happy here." I'm like, "What is there not to be happy about?" People treat them nicely here, as you're seeing.
Yeah.
It's very different. I tell people now I don't want airport to be a destination location, but officers should come through, spend 2, 3, maybe 4 years at the outset, and rotate through just to get a good reset. Get to feel human again.
Right. Well, that makes me think of two things. One, when you were talking about people offering to buy you, lunch or coffee or whatever that it is. I was at a little restaurant down at the beach with my wife, and we were having dinner, and there were 4 officers sitting in the booth behind me. So when it came time, for me to pay, I told the waitress, said, give me their ticket. I'm going to pay for their. And she said, "Oh, that is so nice of you, but the couple sitting over there have already done it."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I do that too. I was in a restaurant the other night, and a couple of the outside agency guys, actually the guys that police the city I'm in, it used to be a sheriff's department, now it's a unified police department, where they contract to various cities, but they were inside the restaurant. I'm like, "Give me their ticket,"
Yeah.
And then I realized I knew one of the guys. I didn't realize he was back on the job. He retired and then must have come back.
Is that right?
Yeah. I wrote him. I'm like, "Hey, were you out at this Mexican place tonight?" "How'd you know?" I said, "I don't know. I heard someone bought your dinner for it." Let it go with that. But no, it's positive to see that in the community.
Yeah. Yeah. And anybody else that's out there and they're listening to this podcast, and they're citizens and they're not part of the law enforcement community, make it a point to tell officers that you appreciate them, because it's needed. It's needed today more than ever before, and they need to know that the majority of people are appreciative of their efforts and the things that they are doing. So it's it's this part of our podcast was really interesting, really fun, and we had a good time. But I want to talk about police coffee. How's that going for you, brother?
You mean this stuff?
That stuff. I mean.
Oh, my camera's all blurry.
I mean this stuff. This stuff here. Look at that.
It's going fantastic.
Yeah.
We've had our doors open for a little over a year now. So we're definitely viable. We've maintained steady growth. Obviously, I'd like to get further reach out there and get a lot more involvement. I've been lucky to do your podcast. I've done several others. One with a officer in Texas. Another with the NYPD Sergeants Association, and one with a member of the NYPD Sergeants Association that has his own. So we're definitely getting good reception. I know NYPD was really happy with. They asked me a question about this bag, and I'm sorry my camera quality sucks, but this is our defunded decaf.
Oh, I saw that one.
They looked at this picture, which we loosely based on. Was it Platoon with Willem Dafoe, where he's trying to get to the helicopter and he's getting shot?
I know where you're talking. Yeah.
Loosely based on that. They asked me if I based it on a picture of one of their chiefs. New York City's a 40,000 person department, but there's a chief of patrol. And I guess in one of the marches, he took a knee and raised his arms up just like that. He's like, "Did you guys do that for us?" I'm like, "No, but you can feel however you want to feel."
That's right. Yeah.
It's up to the interpreter.
Had we known, yes, it was.
So it's been good to get the message out. And, in addition to the fact that it's amazing coffee that we make and roast, my big thing is giving something back to the community, and specifically to those officers that have paid the ultimate sacrifice in protecting their communities. So we do donate. Currently, We're still donating 50% of profits to Concerns of Police Survivors, which is one of the greatest charity organizations I'm familiar with. I think I told you before, I did a bunch of research, and this charity, unlike many others, the majority of each dollar makes it to the families of makes it to the end user. More than 94 cents of each dollar makes it to the families.
Wow, that's incredible, because not all nonprofits are producing.
No, in fact, many that I researched, it was less than 25% of each dollar was making it to those who needed it. And they've been super supportive of our business as far as, they share us with folks at conventions and things. They're fantastic to deal with, and I've got the utmost respect for them. And I'm glad that they were willing to allow us to utilize their name in the partnership. But really, we're in the business of selling coffee, and we make fantastic coffee. It's roasted probably within 3 days or less from the time you order it, and then it's shipped within that time frame. So within a week, you're getting really fresh coffee that's made in small batches right to your doorstep. It's hard to get that from some of the larger companies, because they're making so much volume and they've got warehouses full of ready to go coffee. You're definitely not getting the same level of freshness or flavor.
So let's back up a little bit, so that people that haven't heard the original podcast that we did, where are the beans coming from? Give us a little background on that.
So the majority of our beans are coming from Central and South America. A lot of them come out of Costa Rica, which I don't own a coffee plantation down there, nor do any family members down there own a coffee plantation. We get a lot from there, a lot from Colombia, and some from other South American countries. We take those. A few of our coffee groups are blends, which are different beans, and other ones are just one bean coffee.
Right.
Which, we've gone through and tasted all these, and they meet a standard that is probably much higher than most people would appreciate. So I can assure you, what you're getting with our coffee is a phenomenal flavor. I know I touched on this with you on the phone too, is, when you buy coffee, this is my personal favorite, our dark roast.
Our dark roast, that's mine. There it is.
Why that's not?
That's it.
Terrible camera.
That's I can take a picture of it here. So.
That'll work. So So my recommendation to people for, let's talk about coffee. Let's talk about your best options. The best option, first of all, is to buy whole bean coffee, not pre-ground. Grind it at home. So buy a whole bean, grind it the morning you're going to use it. Only grind enough that you're going to use that day. And you can either, do a pour over, or you can, put it in your drip machine. Pour over is probably going to give you your best flavor, but it's a little more technical. I don't know how many people have time for that. I know I rarely do, and I really enjoy a good pour over, so I usually save that for the weekends. Brewing it that way is going to give you the best and richest flavor. Then your next step is to go to buying it ground. If you buy it ground, though, you need to know that you need to use it fairly quickly, because once it's ground, it immediately starts oxidizing. We put it in these airtight bags.
I was going to say, not to interrupt you on that, but your bags, your airtight bags, are I've never seen anything else like those on the market. I mean, they're thick, they're heavy, they seal really well.
They're good. Yeah. As long as we get a good seal. We have had a few occasionally pop the seal on transportation. I blame it on the shipping companies, but they do keep it as fresh as you can be. But once any coffee is ground, it immediately starts oxidizing. So you do lose some of the flavors that come with that. But again, it's convenient if you don't have a grinder at home. You just put it in your machine and go from there. Again, you can do a pour over, you can brew it however you want, but your best method is always going to be a pour over followed by drip, and then, whatever else you end up doing. Then lastly, we did come up with K-Cups. I don't have a box of them here with me. K-Cups are great because of the convenience. You can pop it in, but and I sell these things, and people love them, and I love them. I'll tell you this, Mike. I didn't tell you earlier. I do bring those to work and use them in my Keurig machine at work because I usually don't have time to just brew a pot. It's just
Right.
easier for me to pop a cup of coffee. However, the issue with K-Cups, no matter how much I want them to be fresh, whether we grind it right then and put it in the K-Cup, it still gets put on a pallet and it sits until we ship them off individually. So you're probably looking at, coffee that's a little bit older than what we can give you if you order whole bean or ground. But what you gain in that is you still get great flavored coffee because we are producing it. The other thing you're getting is just the convenience, for those quick shots you need when you're at work or whatnot, or you're in a place where you can't have a pot of coffee sitting all day.
Right.
It's definitely the way to go, and they're convenient. In fact, you can even put them in your luggage and travel with them. I'll admit I brought mine, a few places I've been because most hotel rooms will have a Keurig machine in there.
Right. Yeah, they do. They do, and they give you one little cup, and
right.
That's it.
So I bring a box with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, our various blends are fantastic. Again, I've mentioned this before on your program. Is our light roast, great tasting, has the highest caffeine content of any of our blends. It does have a higher acidity. So if you're sensitive to that, you may want to put a little cream in it to take that edge off. And you do get a little bit of citrusy taste, I think, which is a result of the acidity. Our medium roast, again, great. It has been one of my favorites. But lately I've been drinking dark roast because for some reason our dark roast is phenomenal. I've told you before, I drink a lot of Guinness. It's a very smooth coffee, and it reminds me of Guinness without the alcohol, so I can drink it at work. And I think you're drinking it too.
Yeah.
So it's well, great tasting coffee.
Yeah, you and I had a conversation. We were talking on the phone and we were talking about the coffee, and you mentioned the dark roast. And at that point, I was drinking the light and the medium roast and hadn't tried the dark. And then once I tried that dark roast, it was game on. That's all Joe and I buy now. As I told you, over the last year or beyond, whatever it was that you and I first started talking, since that point in time, police coffee, only coffee we have in our house.
Appreciate that, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. And as much as I love you, it has to do more with the damn coffee because it is so good.
Now, one other area we've branched out into is flavored coffees. We have some staples, like we were doing this, I don't know if my lighting is good, raspberry chocolate donut.
Oh, really?
Of course, it's cop stuff. We got
you got to put the donut sign.
Very popular. And over the holidays, we did an eggnog. I don't know if you saw that one.
I didn't see that one.
And of course, I'm trying to gear up an Irish cream flavored one for March. So stay tuned for that one. We also are doing a cocoa. I don't know if you saw that. 5-0 cocoa.
No, I didn't see that. No kidding. Fantastic
product. I'd like to tell you we make it on our cocoa bean farm. We source it from a very reliable source. It's phenomenal cacao beans in there. It's the best cocoa I've ever had.
Yeah, is it really? I'm gonna have to grab some of that. Now you guys really branched out to a lot of new products over the last year.
Yeah, I don't think you can be stale in the market. I mean, we make some very good staple products that we don't plan on ever getting rid of. Like our operator, like our existing standard coffee blends. I don't think we're going to have any changes in that. They're all really great sellers. Our biggest seller tends to be our medium roast. I think more people are middle of the road on that.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
They don't want the higher acidity, and they don't want the necessarily darker roast taste to their coffee. But yeah, we've started to move into other flavors. Some of these are limited edition. We'll do them as a small batch.
Right.
And when we sell out, we're out till maybe next year if it's a holiday occasion.
Right. Let me ask you a question. From the time that you get the beans in from roast to bagging to delivery, what's the time frame?
I can't tell you from the time we get the beans in, because as long as they're green, there's not a lot going on with them. But as soon as we drop them in the roaster and get roasting, they're roast small batches, but it's still large amounts for what you and I would consider, coffee size. But they're roasted. I think it's actually pretty much each roast is about 50 pounds each time we run.
Oh, really? That much?
Each cycle is 50 pounds. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. So each roast is about 50 pounds. That gets bagged. And then, like I said, we fulfill the orders, whatever has come in, we roast to that. And then they get shipped within a couple of days after. So that's why I say as soon as it's roasted, they're usually shipped out within 3 days, and then you have it at your door within a week. Yeah.
Yeah. The delivery directly from police coffee is pretty quick. It's sometimes within a 3 to 4 day period.
And I do highly recommend ordering directly from our website. We do have an account on Amazon, which is great if you need it fast, next day service. They've already got it. But you're giving your money to Amazon, so are we.
Well, also too, the other part of that is that especially if you're getting ground coffee, so now it's going from your facility to Amazon, and then it's going to sit there additional amount of time. And
we do regular shipments to them, though it's definitely not anything nearly as quick as what you get if you order from as far as freshness from the site.
Right.
But every 3-4 weeks we're sending a shipment to Amazon, and then I don't know how long it takes a month to get them to call us back for more.
Oh, well, I know that. Yeah. So it could be actually sitting there for a few weeks before it actually gets shipped out.
No, but I think it's a very great platform to get more exposure.
Yeah.
A lot of us, I use Amazon as much as I do some self-loathing for it. It's just convenient.
Brian and I were just talking about that with our home. I don't think that there is a day that goes by with, what would you say, Brian, at least 3 or 4 packages from Amazon showing up?
At least with all the girls you got in the house, at least 3 or 4 packages.
Oh man, it's crazy.
I heard this Christmas you could be your own secret Santa with Ambien and an Amazon account.
It was so crazy. If Christmas time, oh my God, I think that there were times there were 8-10 packages sitting on the front porch.
I hope some of that was police coffee.
Oh, there's always police. There's always police coffee. Always. That's just, and Jill was trying on the Amazon account because, she's Amazon addict. So she found the police coffee on Amazon and was getting it from there. But she is, in the last few orders, has gone back to direct ordering at police coffee.
To be really honest, Amazon is a great resource because of the reach they have. It's amazing, worldwide how many people are using that platform to find things.
Yeah.
So I think it's done a lot for our exposure.
Right.
On there, especially nationwide. We don't ship internationally currently because it's cost prohibitive. But nationwide, we've had a lot of exposure off of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you noticing increases in your social media on your Facebook or on your Instagram?
Again, steady growth. I haven't seen any huge spikes, but weekly everything just keeps going up at a steady rate.
Yeah. Yeah. But are you happy with the growth, or is it, projected growth?
I'm impatient, but I'm also a realist. I would like to see things moving faster. And I think over this year, I think we're going to make a really hard charge into really getting our name out there.
Right.
We've got some exciting projects coming up, and I think that will really start opening some doors for us. The COVID thing has kind of slowed us down a little bit. There were a lot of conventions I was planning on going to. The Fallen Officer Memorial during Police Week in DC. And just with COVID, we just felt it's not the time yet to be going out for those things. Because I think there was a lot less people in general attending those events. But I think you'll see more of that.
Yeah. So we hit on the coffee. Coffee's great. I push it everywhere I go, and I make sure that anybody comes to the house, I always give them the 2 cents on what you guys do with the profits and how good the coffee is, and so I mean, I'm a spokesman, no doubt. What about your coffee cups and your T-shirts and all of those things? And those are a good.
I think you've got one of the metal ones.
Yes,
that's the one we're selling. So
yes.
So all the coffee cups are similar to this one.
Right.
This one is one of a kind. This was the very first mug we had made up. And I am the sole owner of this mug. The rest are blue, and they have just the badge logo on there. I think we offer it in white as well. We also have tumblers, and they're all top quality stuff. It's not junk. I mean, this I'm not like, this isn't a. You could use it as a travel mug. It comes with a lid on it.
Right.
It's insulated. It's as good as some of those other major brands that you see out there marketing those. We do have the coffee tumblers for your car that are insulated that, keep it at your temperature for, 10 hours.
Is that
right?
right?
When I make it in that, it's just too hot. Like I usually leave the lid off for a while I'm in my car, then put it back on. But they work fantastic. We also do shirts, as you can see.
As my shirt, yeah. This is the one that has the blue line on the back.
I think we'll start branching out a little more into some of the merchandise as things pick up.
Right.
It definitely is a little more challenging to manage inventory on those type of things. Right. But we're definitely moving that way. We did a challenge coin last year. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
Mike.
I saw that. Yeah.
And that was very popular. I'm not certain if we sold out or not on that. I know that we were slipping it in during Christmas time depending on the quantity of the order.
Yeah, I actually have 2 of them.
We did a contest last year where we put out a coffee package of 4 or 5 different bags of coffee plus a tumbler and a watch. So I think it's Eggard Watch Company out of New York. They do a blue line watch. And we purchased one of those and threw it in there. They're very much a supporter of law enforcement.
Right.
In fact, they do some wonderful public service kind of announcements that aren't even related to the watch company in regards to policing and the support they give them.
Nice.
Some of them bring tears to, I think he's got 2 out there, but they definitely bring tears to your eyes when you watch them.
Really?
So they've done a great job on that end. So I feel really good about supporting them. And I think off that watch, they give 50% of their profits to another police related charity. Nice.
Anything, and that's what that's what I, in talking about police coffee to people, and I mentioned 50% of the profits and where they go, and that's why I tell everybody, man, this is a win-win. I mean, you not only get, to me, and I'm a coffee addict, and literally, I'm not even exaggerating, I'll probably drink 8 to 10 cups a day.
You're catching up to me, Mike.
I know. I just love it. And I tell everybody it's the best coffee that I've ever had. And then on top of that, knowing where the profits are going, I mean, it's a win-win. You can't beat it.
Yeah, I really want to build it up so we can start writing some really big checks to help these families out.
Yeah.
But again, they've been super supportive. I know they've advertised, if you will, which I don't know if it's advertising, but they've definitely spoken us up at various conferences and things that they've been at.
That's awesome.
So their Concerns of Police Survivors is a great organization, and I'm really happy to be able to help them out.
Yeah. Well, you guys are doing a great job. You got great coffee, great cause. To be a part of it, it's kind of a spokesperson on the side is just, I love pushing the coffee because it's so damn good. And if I can get the rest of my family to buy into it and get it, then I can go anywhere I want and get police coffee. I
do think this year is going to be great for us. So yeah. I'm very optimistic that things are going to really start moving forward this year.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to, we gotta stay in touch a little bit better than we have this last year. I know we get busy and all, but the next podcast that we do is going to be face to face. We're going to be in the same room, so I get you out here.
I'd much rather be in your neck of the woods right now because I think it's probably 30 degrees outside.
Oh yeah,
my house right now.
It wasn't all that warm here today. I think it was 71. It was a little chilly here.
That would feel like a heat wave for me. But I'm the guy that when I'm not in uniform is still wearing shorts outside in 30-degree weather.
Is that right? So. That's crazy. Yeah, it's like when we first started talking, I'm sitting here, I had my sweatshirt on because I for some reason was feeling a little bit chilled. Because I don't know why, but now I feel stupid. You're sitting in 30-degree weather.
Not inside my house. My house is climate controlled like everyone else.
Yeah, no, you look pretty comfortable there. So,
but outside, it's cold. It's not the coldest it gets. It's pretty average for our area, and not a lot of snow this year. We've had a couple of good snowstorms, and then it's kind of tapered off. Yeah,
well, buddy, it's been great talking with you. Good seeing you too.
Appreciate you having me on, Mike.
Oh, it's fun. We always get into these lengthy conversations, and the time just flies by. I can't believe Brian was flashing me the 1 hour and then the 2 hour, and how much? What are we at?
We're at about 2 hours 5 minutes here.
Yeah, 2 hours 5 minutes.
We got to keep up with the other podcasts that go like 3 hours.
Yeah, that one. Oh, that was a crazy one. That was Big Ed. And then he's telling me because he has a 67 Camaro. Is that a 67 or 68 that Ed's got?
I think it's a 68, I think.
Yeah, 68 Camaro, got the 454. It's got,
It's like in the movie Better Off Dead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a badass car. And so he was going to take it to a car show Saturday. So, he talks me into going with him. And he says, you should go. Be a great time, man. Introduce people. Yeah, that sounds fun. Then he tells me what time. He picks me up at 4 a.m. So seriously, I mean, it was like he's got to get there. He's got to get the right spot, and it's like So, but it was a good time. But that was a good podcast. You get a chance to listen. That was a lot of fun because he's a coach for football for like 30 years, high school, strength and conditioning coach. He has met Pete Carroll. He's had lunch with John Wooden. He's coached a number of kids that have gotten scholarships to some high-ranking, colleges. A number of kids that went to play on pro sports, for pro football. So he's been around the block, and it was really interesting to talk to him. And then plus he's an assistant principal at a local high school. And,
oh, nice.
Yeah, so he had a lot of stories. It's like us. I enjoy, conversations with guys at our ages because we've got life experiences and we can just talk forever. I'm going to have a guy on that I met at the car show, and he's been long retired, and I'm not even going to guess his age, but he's got to be mid-70s, and just a talker. But this guy now, he was a school teacher, he's retired, but since then he's been into classic cars and the buying and selling and doing different things. I mean, he's got a ton of stories too, and people that he knows, and he spent a whole day or afternoon with Jay Leno at Jay Leno's facility.
That's like Disneyland for me. Okay, I can only imagine.
Oh my God, yeah. That he was telling me that Jay Leno's got 8 full-time mechanics that work there, 3 guys full-time that work in the machine shop, and 2 guys that work full-time in the upholstery shop. And it's not a business. It's just Jay's stuff, and he pays all these guys to take care of everything. Nuts.
Well, you'd have to with what he has.
Yeah, I guess he's got over 170 cars, 175 cars.
He's got some great cars and motorcycles,
Yeah.
I can talk that all day too.
Yeah.
He's got some good stuff. But what I really like about your program, Mike, is that you bring on such a diverse group of people, and everyone's got a story. Everyone's got something interesting in their life.
Yeah.
Whether it's your guy that's working, and I'm just, a guy working sanitation for a large city, guy working as a mechanic, a guy, working in any line of work. They all have some story that's unique to their experience.
Yep.
which I think by sharing those stories definitely brings people closer together.
Yes. You know what? And that's the whole philosophy of the podcast is just average people with extraordinary stories and just willing to get on and talk and share it. You know, we had a guy on yesterday that works in the ER trauma, a local hospital. You know, got to talk to him about that and what goes on, what's behind the scenes. It's interesting stuff. You know, we had a girl. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but it was CSI Barbie, and she's a crime scene investigator. And we didn't really talk too much about that part of it. We hit on it. But she was also an extreme hiker, what I call extreme hiker, the type that gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning, gets to the site. It's still dark, but they have it all planned out. They got the right food. They got and they leave early because it's a 23-mile hike up the top of Mount Whitney or something stupid, you know, and just interesting, you know, fun to talk to. You know, there's just all kinds of people, you know, that. You know, just
great stories. I mean, there's
stuff,
and a lot of people, you got to drag it out of them just a little bit. You know, they're not used to sharing it.
Yeah.
One of my close friends that I work with, I didn't find out till last year that when he was younger, just out of high school, he actually climbed Mount Rainier.
Is that right?
In Washington. Yeah. Except he never made it to the top because he fell into a crevasse, broke his leg, and nearly died.
Oh, my.
You know, the rope held him.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. I was like,
yeah. Sometimes something like that's a better story, unfortunately, than if he made it up to the top. That's kind of like, geez, you know.
Oh, well, after
luckily that he
broke, it really made me hesitate.
Yeah, but, you know, that he survived. It makes the story, you know. So.
Oh yeah, he did say he was worried there, you know, for a few hours whether or not he was going to make it out or whether rescuers were going to be able to get to him and the rest of his people to get him backed out.
Stuff guys like that, man, that I love. If you ever come across something like that and they're willing to do a podcast, just call me. We'll set up a remote like this with them. I'm always looking for good stories, good people.
No, he's a great guy. I'll see what he says.
Yeah, see what he says. If he just wants to sit and chat, man, that'd be a cool story too. But anyway, buddy, I'll let you know when we're putting everything up. We should be posting. What did we say, Thursday?
Yeah, I think we're going with Thursday on this one.
Okay, so we'll be up and running on it, man. And
right on. I appreciate everything, Mike.
Hey,
if you need anything, let me know.
I appreciate you coming on, and you know, thank you for 2 hours out of your day. I appreciate you. Thank you for making the best coffee on the planet.
Thanks. I try. We try.
Yeah, no, you do, man. You guys hit it out of the park. It's good. So
policecoffee.com. Policecoffee.com.
Yeah, it's
policecoffee.com.
Yeah, it's policecoffeecompany.com, isn't it? Or is it just
policecoffee.com?
Is
we kept it short to make it
nice.
easy to type into your address bar.
There you go, man. There you go. Okay, we're going to be pushing that one. Actually, I already put a little picture of the cup on my Instagram story. So just to let everybody know.
Well, thanks again, Mike.
Yeah. Well, you take care of yourself. Let's stay in contact, and I'll shoot you a text when we get everything edited and posted. And
so you're gonna make Brian go to work, is what you're saying?
That's exactly right. Yeah, he's just been sitting.
Thanks, Brian.
He's been sitting here while you and I have been working. He ain't been doing shit.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Okay. Thanks, Stephan. Take care, buddy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.